welcome to The Real Deal. I think this is our third episode. I'm Christina Arangio, and on this show, we break down real-life concerns with an authentic conversation and get some very valuable advice from Dr. Julie Morrison. She's a local psychologist with HPA Live Well. Julie, good morning.
Good morning.
Always great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so each week as we wrap up, we kind of have a challenge of what we should be focusing on, right, based on our conversation. So last week we were talking about facing your fears with breast cancer awareness.
Right.
And you posed the challenge about doing something that maybe we were putting off medically.
Sure.
So how'd you do with that?
I did good. I did great. I took my planner, and yes, it's paper because I like paper planners. And I went month by month, and I planned out me and my kids and my husband what's due. So physicals, dentist, dermatology, whatever.
Oh, wow.
And
you really did well.
I did it a month ahead, so make sure that I had my appointments scheduled because, we're always waiting for those appointments. So I feel solid about it.
Oh,
now,
my gosh.
I'll probably have to reschedule half of those appointments, but I did pretty good.
But you did the
I
first
nailed
step.
it. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, I did
about
not
you?
do nearly as well. But what I did was I thought that I had a physical coming up.
Okay.
And it was on my head because I couldn't find it. Now, I will use my phone for a calendar, but I also use the paper calendar. Okay. So I did find out that it is coming up not until January, so I have time. But, we talk about all these health topics, and I do a lot of health stuff for, TV. So it's on my head. So I did that, got the physical, it's scheduled, I've got blood work the week before. So I was happy about that. Mammogram, not scheduled yet, but I started the process for this because you know how you have to go through your OBGYN to get the script. So I've started the process. But the reason I bring this up too is that we were talking about this last week a little bit. So often you have to stay on it.
You do. Yeah.
And it's not easy. My OBGYN switch practices. So then by the time you get a hold of them, then schedule the appointment, and then you go for the appointment, and then you get to make the mammogram. And how many times have you called, Julie, and you get the, the hold music? And you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, and then you can't wait any longer, and you hang up and you go, well, you know what? I tried. But the problem is it's our health. So we really do need to make sure that, so that's just a little, from last week,
Keep it on the to-do list. If you didn't do it today, make it move over to the next one.
Don't forget and just be like, I've had it, I'm done with this. Because I think it's getting harder and harder, and I think it's one reason people aren't being proactive.
Yes, absolutely, 1,000%.
All right, well, so that's last week's conversation, but it's good to mention that. So today we're talking smartphones, and is this a doozy of a topic?
Yeah.
I mean, so the way we titled it when we were talking about this, the good, the bad, and the dangerous. I mean, honestly, the dangerous.
Yep.
So, and it's all of us, we worry about our kids, both have our children, but it's certainly not just them.
No, it's not.
We're guilty of it too. So, so take me back to the beginning here of, how it started off as a good thing and then COVID hits.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? So it's not like we didn't have social media, we didn't have phones. We did before COVID hit, but when COVID isolated everybody, people leaned on social media. They leaned on, technology. It could be even, Zoom meetings or, Zoom school, Google Meets, and social media and things like that. And so what's happened was, it was sort of something people were doing. That's absolutely true. Yeah. But with so much less to do outside of your home and things like that, people started to scroll. They started to post more. They started to utilize things like Reels. And so it became more and more intense. And I think we saw
TikTok blew up.
We did, right. And I think what we saw was there were a lot of positives, right? It kept people connected, especially the elderly who were not able to connect, right? Like we weren't supposed to see anybody. We weren't allowed to go visit them. And so you could see grandparents and you could talk to people you normally weren't able to see because they were at risk for getting sick.
Right, that was a good thing,
and that was
right?
great.
Yeah.
Kids could continue to do school, right?
Yeah.
They were still educated. You could still have social experiences. So these kids would play video games, and they would also be able to talk on the phone, right? Or be connected by headsets and things like that.
Right, so they had an activity to do and feel some connection.
But the problem is depending on when that happened for you developmentally, that became the norm. And so I think what we've all struggled with as parents is what's the norm and what is reasonable to push kids outside of that comfort of, well, I can just text, I don't have to call. Or I can just, play video games with someone and talk to them over my headset. I don't need to have somebody over to go do those things, right? And so I think we're all struggling with that a little bit in terms of that. I think the other thing is the management of how often we're on social media. So
Oh,
listen,
boy.
I'm never going to tell you to go off and tell kids or tell anybody don't use it. It's the best way to get someone to always use it.
Right, because it's just not realistic in our day and age. But yeah,
Absolutely.
that's almost a rebellion thing, right?
Absolutely. If I say no, you're going to say, oh yeah.
Right. I'll
Why
find
not?
a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to be educated about it.
Okay, so you were mentioning with regard to having that connection. I do think that what's happening with these devices is, and this is something I know we're going to talk about a little bit later with school, is that personal face-to-face connection is falling away.
Well, we're not as good at it. I mean, don't forget that, right? Like, so for example, and I'm not saying this is a bad, technology, but you Snapchat, for example.
Yeah.
Somebody sends a message, 30 seconds later, it's gone.
Gone.
Right? And people can, there's no consequence to that, really, right? You just kind of shoot from the hip and it's over with. There's no sitting there and talking to someone and watching their physical response or their emotional response to what you're saying to them. There's no facial expressions. There's none of that.
Yeah.
There's also a really great opportunity to take things out of context. Right? It's a couple words here or there.
Oh yeah, like texting. I mean, you can't really
tone.
read a person.
Right.
You can't read
Right.
tone.
And how many times have you sent the wrong text to the wrong person?
Oh yeah.
Or sent the wrong text,
Yes.
the wrong message to someone by saying, no, that's not what I meant.
Right.
Or something's capitalized. My father will text me, it's all in caps. I'm like, I think you're yelling at me.
Why are you yelling?
I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
it's really about, that if that's the form of communication, we're not great at it. And I think people are getting more and more nervous about, kids will get nervous, especially about, talking to grown-ups.
Yes.
Where they
making
don't.
a phone call.
Yes. Making a phone call or even ordering in restaurants. Kids who were better at it before where
I was just
now
gonna say
I guess I'll have I look down, I'll have a steak
because
because they're nervous.
I was just going to say that. I've noticed this with my son, which is something we're always working on him,
Sure.
and, encouraging him to talk more with others, given his special needs, and usually no problem. He'll order in the restaurant. Last few times we went, he's been very reluctant. I said, no, you got this. But yeah, it's that connection. And when you think about kids who've grown up this way, and the younger they are, we're like, well, we know how to talk to people.
Right.
We didn't have phones all our lives.
Right.
But our kids?
Right. But don't forget, too, we as parents look at our own kids and we're like, how are you socially? How are you doing that? Are you good at it? But you remember, they're also being received by another kid that also hasn't had the exposure. So,
True.
like, we're talking right now, and I could tell if you're like, what are you talking about? I'd be able to tell that on your face.
Right, sure.
So I could pivot.
Right.
These kids, if my son talks to your son and he looks at him like what are you talking about? My son might not know how to pick up that cue. And your son might have meant, no, I get what you're saying, but I don't know how to give the cue. So remember, we've got multiple exchanges, the receiver and the giver, who aren't great at this anymore.
So yeah, it isn't even just our words. It's you're not even seeing their body language, which is a huge part of communication.
Exactly. And then everything's also abbreviated and or different words, right? I mean, literally I have half the time I don't know what my children are saying to me. I mean, no cap.
The words, I can't. I guess that's one, right?
So, yeah. I nailed
I don't
that.
know that
Just
one.
so you know, I nailed it.
Okay.
But that's the thing, right? So there's so much lost in translation that we're all kind of scrambling of literally if we had a bubble over our head constantly, it would be, what did you just say to me?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So this is the one piece that I think is of huge concern.
Yeah.
But then there's so much more to this, and we were discussing, it's not so much statistics, but the bad parts: depression, body image, eating disorders, predators. My gosh, I mean, this is terrifying for a parent.
Yep.
I know I just threw a lot at you there, but try to break down for us a little bit, if you could, just these areas that we really have to be aware of.
Right. So here's the thing, with social media, but really with anything, it could be a kid on the bus, right? Our kids and ourselves, we get influenced by the people and the things we see, right? And so they can lead to depression, anxiety, poor body image, things like that. And we're seeing more and more of it because what's happening is it's so accessible. It's constant, right? So you're scrolling on your phone, and depending about the position that you're coming from, if I'm not feeling great about myself today, and I scroll and I find somebody who is encouraging weight loss, maybe now all of a sudden I'm like, well, maybe I should lose weight. It depends, the position you're coming from, you're affected by what you're seeing, and then it kind of goes from there. So we have seen a problem with, an increase in anxiety and depression. We have seen a lot of struggle with eating disorders and poor body image, but we're also seeing things, and these are real physical effects of attention deficit concerns, ability to function and focus on something for long periods of time because of the act of scrolling. So
You're moving from one thing to the next, to the
right.
next,
So
to the
you've
next.
got the issue of social media in the sense of the distress that it causes. Do I have enough likes? Is someone paying attention to me? We've got the urgent response of constantly checking for alerts. We've got that constant, that dopamine response of like, wait, I heard my phone, I saw my phone.
And if you don't
something lit
check
up.
for the younger kids too, then you're on the outs, right? You got to
Absolutely.
respond, or you don't respond, you're in trouble.
Absolutely. So
This
you've
is a
got
thing.
the content from social media that kind of swirls your brain around. And then you've got the actual act of the scrolling, right? So what we know is that act of scrolling, the watching the reels for a couple of seconds and then go into the next one, go into the next one. And people sit there and do it for hours, right? I mean, I've gotten sucked in there before. My husband will say to me, did you get stuck in reels? Why? Because I sent you 17 of them. Weren't they funny? But we all get stuck, right?
do. I've done it
But we're seeing that mimic the same effects on your brain that using substances like cocaine. Right, we see dopamine changes in brains, and we're having difficulty with storing memory, and they're having another difficulty with being able to invest in content. So think about the old adage of reading a good book. Right now, I'm not trying to sell to people that you should read instead of do social media. That's a great way for my kids to never pick up another book. Right,
True.
but investing in something, long-term interest in engaging in something is going downhill because we're wanting such quick reward from seeing those short snippets of things. And so that's the thing.
What a mess.
It's a little messy.
It is. I mean, this is a whole new world, and it's definitely challenging to navigate. We've got a lot more to talk about. I mean, we could do 5 segments.
I know. I feel like my hair is blowing in the wind.
Because there's so much.
I know.
We're back in just a moment with a lot more, and we'll chat more about how to talk to your kids about social media.
Great.
Welcome back to The Real Deal, here with Julie, Dr. Julie Morrison from HPA Live Well. We were saying this is one of those topics that could just go on forever here. And you were saying there are 2 specific things with regard to our phones and social media. Talk to me about that first before we talk about how we address this with our children so that they're not completely addicted.
Right. So we were just saying that, if we had to put it, if there was one way to sum all of that up that we were just saying is when it comes to social media, you've got the content in there and that how that affects the way you see yourself and your mental health and what parts of your life that sort of challenges. And then you've got the other piece, which is literally the act of utilizing social media in the way where you are repetitively scrolling through short reels and how that's affecting your health. One thing we didn't mention before too was that, the actual act of sitting on your phone, what other health consequences are there? So we know that there's sort of this dopaminergic effect that's happening with these constant going through the reels, right? It's sort of affecting attention and things like that, similar to sort of that addiction piece, that loop. Right, but we also know that there's neck concerns because people they call it tech neck, right? Because you're sitting like this,
or tech neck,
and eye strain, right? You can go in between the blue light and the constant exposure to your phones, the eye strain that people experience. So people are needing more and more aids to be able to see, right? Glasses and things like that. And so those are concerns. And also being more sedentary. You're sitting and you're looking at your phone.
Right.
Or you're walking with your phone
Which is
you're
dangerous.
walking into traffic, right? So and so there are the physical effects that people don't really think about when it comes to using your phone.
On the treadmill yesterday, and I'm on the phone, and I'm like, let me try to post this. I'm saying, this is getting challenging. And am I really doing what I should be doing in terms of the exercise? Because I'm like leaning over and
Right. And are you really mindful of what you're actually doing and sort of being in that place at that time, being, taking those 30 minutes or whatever it is on the treadmill to take care of yourself and de-stress or whatever it's for, are you doing that if you're on your phone? Is the phone distracting to the point where, it's funny because it's sort of a coping skill now, especially for kids, but for anybody. I mean, have you ever gotten into an elevator in the last 5 years without, someone gets in the elevator and everybody's on their phone?
Oh, you're so
And
right.
it's instant. Now, are you really looking for something, or you just not want to talk to somebody?
You don't want to talk to someone, and it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and there's that silence, and so everybody's like, "Oh, I'll just check my phone for a minute here, so I don't have to." Whereas, certainly my husband and others might be like, "Oh, hi, how are you? Good morning,"
Right.
and talk to people. But other people don't like that, and the more we're doing this, the less we want to converse with other people. So there's so many pitfalls here.
Yeah, and it's a cultural norm now.
Yeah, and it's a cultural norm. And here's the problem I have. I've often said to my daughter, like, you're the guinea pigs. You're the ones who had it from, when you were young.
Yeah.
And I remember, trying so hard, keep her off till 13.
Yeah.
It was a little bit before then, but it was still limiting certain things. Like, okay, you can only have this, but you can't have this social media. You can. And then that's a whole other conversation we could have where if you don't have it and everyone else does, there are parents out there who are really trying, saying, okay, if you want a car, you're going to be off social media until such whatever it is. But I have a friend who did that. Then I find out, from another friend that they found their way around it, but she didn't really realize.
Well, you
it's
can't
impossible.
really, and you can't weaponize social media, right? So, one thing we were talking about was, how do you talk to your kids about it, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I can say I'm going to take you off Instagram. I'm going to take your phone away. I'm going to whatever. Yeah, fine.
It's good punishment.
But one of the things we have to do is we want them to actually tell us what they're seeing. That is one spot in their life we really want to know about.
Interesting.
Right? So we want to be careful about what those punishments sort of are, maybe regulating the time, setting those time limits so that, you're going to scroll and I don't love that that's what you're doing. Everybody else is doing it. Yep, got that. But I'm going to put time limit on there so that I can help you manage that. Our ultimate goal as parents is to get our kids to regulate their phone usage themselves. I mean, that is the ultimate goal, right? It's really our goal with our kids in general to manage any vice.
Sure.
Right? Kids go off to college and they're having different experiences. Should they drink? Should they not? Right? We want them to self-regulate. And so learning how to manage their phones is a really good example of making good choices for their health. But how do you get them to care about it? Right? How do you get them to pay attention to this? It's funny because sometimes I'll send stuff from Instagram to my kids about phone usage.
Yeah.
They don't open it. Right? Like that's not a super effective way for my kids to open that.
No,
now,
I feel the same. I've tried to address this with my daughter and say, this is a concern. The depression is a real concern. You need to get out. But like you said, how do we reach them? Because these traditional methods they're like, yeah, everybody's doing it. Or this is another answer, which I get is, oh, you should see what other people are doing.
Absolutely.
And so at least I'm just doing this. I'm just on my phone, Mom. You don't even know what's going on out there.
Exactly. And you're like, no, I do. And that's why I'm worried about this.
And I've said that.
So one of the best things I think you can do is you can't use the classic, right, those classic arguments, but you can find something that matters to your kids. So if I say to my son, I know he wants to be a good athlete, right? He wants to perform well. I also know that if he doesn't get enough sleep, that's going to be hard for him.
Sure.
So if I say, you need good sleep as a performing athlete, that means you need to be off your phone so you can sleep, and you should be off your phone early enough so that you can get a good night's sleep, right? You need time off of it before you fall asleep. Now, I've made him a case for something that matters to him, not for something that matters to me, because you have to remember, kids are all in the developmental stage of drive fast, take chances, right? It's not me. It's not going to happen to me. My brain's fine.
Somebody else.
I have
young.
straight A's in school. What are you worried about? My attention's fine, whatever.
Yep.
So instead, you got to pick something that actually matters to them. But that's like anything. Right? If I want you to care about something, I am going to take what matters to you and go backwards to help you stop doing this one thing, because that'll help you be better at this thing you care about. Get them to invest that way. But you also want to know, and you got to figure out a way that they communicate with you. And it's really, every kid's a little different. Got to know what they're seeing.
Oh my gosh. And this, the toughest thing, and the younger they are, the more concerned that is. There's controls, thankfully, parental controls, but how, especially Snapchat, perfect example.
Yeah.
They could be seeing something for a second and it's gone and you can't check it. So that is terrifying to me. Of course, this is bringing me to an area that I didn't know we were going to talk about today, but the Charlie Kirk assassination. And knowing that my daughter probably had already seen it.
Yes.
Texting her and saying, "Here, this has happened.
Yeah.
You're probably going to see it, knowing she probably already had.
Yeah.
And I can't even remember what I said. I don't know if I said, don't watch it.
Yeah.
Because that's like, again, like, oh, I'm going to watch it.
Right.
Or, I can't remember how I handled it, but I definitely said, it's out there.
Yeah.
And she responded, I've seen it twice already.
Yeah.
I saw the close-up. I saw the...
Yeah.
And it's not just that. There was another incident, a Ukrainian woman who was murdered and they was on a train and she was stabbed to death, and that was circulating. Our kids, young kids, are seeing people being murdered on their phones.
Well, it's funny. I
How do
remember
we
saying to my
handle
son,
this?
He told me about it.
Oh,
My
wow.
husband
He
told me
saw
at
it
the same
first?
time. Then he came downstairs and goes, "Look, this happened." And I said to him, it's interesting because it looked like a movie.
Right.
It looked like something they've seen on a movie.
Yep.
And it went and it went and it went. The thing is, they didn't know what to do with it because it really was one of the first things that was so public that they looked at. And
so horrific.
And it was really hard for these kids because it was people were reposting. Now, was it the image wasn't necessarily what they were reposting, but they were posting, rest in peace and things like that.
Yeah.
But this was a very charged incident, right? It's a politically charged incident. And kids simply were like, wow, this bad thing happened to this person. Of course, RIP.
Right.
But wait a minute. Do you know what that, do you adhere to what they believe in? And that's not a comment of mine one way or the other.
Yeah.
I think the difference is that this is so wrought with so many different aspects because kids need to know, like when they post, for example, they're representing themselves, but they're also saying that whatever I'm saying might represent me, even if I don't really know what I'm saying. So I'm going to say, this person is funny. This comedian's funny. Well, what if this comedian makes racist comments, but you didn't know about it?
Right, and you said it was funny.
You're now part of that. And so that's the conversation. Look, our kids are going to learn stuff at school. You're not preventing them from hearing about things or learning about things.
Yeah.
Your job is to talk about those things and how those pieces, how they position themselves, how they post things, how they follow things, how that history is now them. That is part of their blueprint, right? It's just like a fingerprint.
Yep.
Their social media posting, reposting, liking, all of that stuff is now part of their fabric, and you can't go away from that. And I say that to my kids when it comes to college applications,
absolutely,
playing
jobs,
sports, jobs. There are filters for those things to check. What have you supported? And if you aren't sure that this person represents things that you believe in, that the other things they've done, then hold off.
Right.
And that's the conversation that people have to have. We're not trying to put our kids in boxes to say, you must believe the same thing as me.
Right.
We're simply saying, once you put yourself out there, it's out
It's out there. And you can't take it back.
You can't take it back.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the best advice, and I feel like, I'm speaking personally here, but I feel like my daughter regulates well in that regard because she doesn't want people to think she's taking one position or another. So she's very, very cautious. But that is something, I don't know, maybe we've talked about it, maybe she just knows, but it's something we should talk about with our kids.
But it's interesting because you could take a kid that your daughter's in college, she went through high school, she knows how to navigate a crowd, right? These friends don't get along with these friends, but so she takes something that's probably something she's done, and she now does it in the greater light, right?
Yeah.
These kids are learning how to manage those things.
Yeah.
All of this stuff builds who they are and who they're gonna be. But also remember, kids are creative. They're smart. If you think that you're following your kid on Instagram, you might want to know.
They've got 5 different fake accounts.
That's right.
Right.
And so know their friends, know your kids, be involved, know what they're interested in, and ask questions.
Yeah, this is tough. All right, so a challenge, boy, oh boy. Is it more for something that we should be doing with our kids, or what do you think the real challenge is today that we'll try to talk about next week?
You know what I would love is for everybody to think about who they are role model wise using their phones. Is your phone down?
Setting the example.
Yeah. Is your phone down during dinner? Who do you want your kids, what do you want them to see? Be that this week.
That's perfect. That's perfect. We knew that this is something we'll revisit again in different parts of it.
I bet.
And I know there'll be so many other topics that come up. It's going to
Absolutely.
involve the smartphone. But Julie, such an important conversation. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Sure.
It's all the time we have for The Real Deal. We will see you next week. I'm Christina Arangio.